The Blade is Me on Zangetsu's origins being revealed has got to be one of my favorite moments in all of anime, and for a reason. However, from time to time, especially when people are debating Ichigo's transformations or anything related to his inner spirits like Old Man Zangetsu's name being omitted in the first arc, I usually see them throwing the sentence "Kubo reckoned this in The Blade is Me," which is blatantly false to say the least, hence why I'm gonna be proving that Kubo has actually planned this whole plotline from the very beginning, as well as clarify whatever famous misconceptions regarding this topic. For the sake of argument, let's assume that this plot twist is actually a retcon. This means that Kubo didn't plan the old man to be Ichigo's Quincy powers or White to be his Soul Reaper powers, which automatically makes White just a holo and Old Man Zangetsu the Zanpakuto spirit he was supposed to be. But this also means that not only Ichigo is not a Quincy and does not have Quincy heritage, but also his father Urahara and Uryu's father should not know each other, because the only way they knew one another was because of the flashback involving White. And in case this was a retcon as we assumed, Kubo wouldn't have planned it that early in the story. But you see, there are too many problems with our assumption here. As in the first episode, we can see that Ichigo's bedsheet has a Quincy cross on it, which is an indication to his Quincy heritage. In chapter 7, Isshin is talking to a Karakura hospital worker on the phone, and according to him, he seems to know the CEO of that hospital. And who do you think the CEO of that hospital is? It is Uryu's father. Urahara too seems to have knew about Ichigo and his full potential. He even made him undergo a training where Ichigo awakens his natural Soul Reaper powers. How did he know that Ichigo is a trueborn Soul Reaper? It is because he knew about his parents, which is revealed not much later in the beginning of the Arrancar saga, when he meets with Isshin and they seem to share a past together, as Urahara tells Isshin, "I don't want you to blame me for your diminished spiritual powers," which is exactly what happened in the Thousand Year Blood War flashback. And in chapter 241, Isshin meets with Ryukin, and Ryukin tells him that it seems he has regained his power. Ryukin knew about this fact 300 chapters before the flashback was revealed. There was no need for Kubo to add all that if he never planned this flashback and this mini-story arc from all the way back. So at the very least, the build-up and the explanation to the plot twist was not a retcon, as I just proved. Now as for both Old Man Zangetsu and White, their true nature was foreshadowed a lot. I've already made a detailed video about the foreshadowing in Bleach, in which involves a lot of the hints to the plot twists, so make sure to check that one out. But I'm gonna focus on the most important moments that clearly show their true nature. In episode 19, when Ichigo was inside his inner world as part of Urahara's training, when he tries pulling out his Zanpakuto from one of the boxes folding in his inner world, Old Man Zangetsu starts glowing in white. And at that point of the story, he had White absorbed inside of him, and that's why White started glowing inside of Old Man Zangetsu, since Ichigo has just awakened his natural Soul Reaper powers. In chapter 110, in Ichigo's battle against Zaraki, Old Man Zangetsu takes Ichigo to his inner world in order to train him so he can beat Zaraki. Now notice how Old Man Zangetsu is asking Ichigo to fight White to see whether he is worthy of wielding his Zanpakuto instead of fighting Ichigo by himself, which foreshadows White being Ichigo's true Zanpakuto spirit that he needs to subdue and fight in order to use its powers. Old Man Zangetsu then tells Ichigo that this time his opponent is himself, referring to White. And as we all know, a Zanpakuto is an image of a Soul Reaper's soul, so this scene hints that White is Ichigo's Zanpakuto and not just an evil holo trying to take over Ichigo. I also want you to notice White's reflection on the blade, showing that he is internally upset even if he is keeping a smile on the outside, and that's because at that time Ichigo didn't recognize him as his true Zanpakuto. White also tells Ichigo, "You think you know your Zanpakuto just because you know its name." And looking in retrospect, this is pretty ironic, as Ichigo literally didn't know who his Zanpakuto was. And after Ichigo was done from the training, White tells Old Man Zangetsu to train Ichigo well, as Ichigo's powers are gonna be his one day, hinting to the fact that Ichigo will recognize White as his true Zanpakuto in the future. Ichigo carried on to fight Zaraki and charges towards him, and we can see his aura resembling his holo mask. And remember, in this moment it was supposed that Ichigo's Zanpakuto, who we thought was the old man at that time, was the one helping Ichigo and supplying him with power. But the aura emitted from the Zanpakuto is that of a holo, which again proves that Kubo planned from the very beginning that White has a dual nature and Old Man Zangetsu is something else, which happens to be a Quincy. In chapter 220, White explicitly tells Ichigo that he is the real Zangetsu. And even though there are still much more evidence that proves this plot twist was never retconned, I think this is where we draw the line. It cannot have been retconned after White explicitly stated it. Now, let's move to the most controversial part of this topic, with the whole Yhwach's name blacked by Ichibi's ink, a retcon by Kubo. I already explained that multiple times, so I'm gonna append the segment of one of my older videos for the explanation. After the Soul Society made the Soul King a keystone, aka committed their first sin, Yhwach was mad about this, so he started planning to invade the Soul Society and bring the rain down, obviously using his troublesome powers, the Almighty. Ichibi feared the threat that Yhwach poses and had to take an action to stop him. This was shown in their flashback in the second core of the war arc. Yhwach refused to comply with Ichibe, and that's why Ichibi sealed his eyes, which means that Yhwach fought the original Gootey without the Almighty, and that is a reasonable reason to why he lost the fight. However, he was not killed after his defeat unlike the rest of his comrades. Doesn't make sense, does it? Remember this scene?
この事態を招いた元凶のすべては総隊長のあなたが1000年前のあの時あの男を殺しきれなかったせいではないのか
Yamamoto couldn't actually kill Yhwach. Why? I think it is because the Almighty could be regained upon Yhwach's death, as Ichibi stated in their flashback, and the Almighty can in fact bring Yhwach back to life even after he is killed, which means that instead of killing him, he had to be sealed, obviously by Ichibe. And since Yhwach was sealed and had his name erased for the past 1,000 years, Old Man Zangetsu, who was part of Yhwach's soul, couldn't utter his name upon meeting Ichigo for the first time. Even if you're not buying this explanation by me, it is really hard to retcon something like this. It is actually much easier to plan it ahead. And also, why would Kubo omit the name of the spirit we already proved was not intended from all the way back to be his Soul Reaper powers by a black ink seal that is about to break? You cannot even argue it is just an artistic choice, as when Kubo tried to hide the fact that Aizen knows Ichigo is a Quincy in chapter 396, he simply left it blank. So why didn't he do the same for the word Zangetsu?